America thanked the Croats for saving Bosnia and Herzegovina. These words should be kept in mind today when the Bosniak elite from Sarajevo wants to erase the Croatian people. It should also be remembered that wars are rarely fought only on the battlefield, but that behind them there is a whole network of political, diplomatic, historical, and strategic maneuvers. Such was the case with the Homeland War. The key military police operation was Storm, which forever destroyed Serbian imperialism. Behind this victory, a tense diplomatic game was played, later described by the American ambassador Peter Galbraith.
One of his records is particularly striking. On August 3, 1995, Peter Galbraith predicted the start of a general Balkan war the next morning. It was the night before Operation Storm, an operation aimed at finally liberating the occupied Croatian territories and stopping Serbian ethnic cleansing. Galbraith's record reflects the tensions of the evening when everyone expected a crisis, but also a sense of exhaustion after a series of failed negotiations with the rebellious Serbs who called themselves the Republic of Serbian Krajina. Galbraith, from the position of an American diplomat, stood opposite the determination of the Croatian political leadership, which, aware of Washington's resistance and restraint, chose the path of military liberation of our homeland.
On that day, Galbraith spoke with President Tudjman. He knew, and would later record, that NATO and Washington did not believe in the possibility of a peaceful return of the occupied territories, but diplomatic routine required formality. A few more rounds of futile negotiations with the leaders of the rebel Serbs had to be carried out.
Well, on the morning of August 5th, it brought not only awakened hope for Croatia, but also an urgent note in Galbraith's diary. The Croats have made a great military breakthrough. This morning, they captured Knin. With these words, he testifies to a historic moment that will, in parts of the international community, provoke admiration, but also concern, especially in the context of what was happening simultaneously in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
During that period, the tragic situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina escalated into the greatest humanitarian tragedy in Europe since World War II. Serbian massacres, ethnic cleansing, and unprecedented violence, especially in Srebrenica, shattered any illusion about the effectiveness of the international community. Galbraith understood that the Bosnian Serb army, financed, organized, and directed from Belgrade, acted as an extended arm of the warlike Serbia of the notorious Slobodan Milosevic. The American administration at that time, seemingly indecisive, criticized and condemned the crimes, but did not intervene militarily.
No, because of the city of Bihać, which was surrounded by Serbs, the Americans accepted Croatian determination. Galbraith conveyed a message from Washington to the Croatian government. We appreciate your willingness to sacrifice your own money and blood to defend the Bosniaks. However, at the same time, American policy was wary of providing direct security guarantees to Croatia and would have preferred to maintain the status quo. Franjo Tudjman and Defense Minister Gojko Šušak concluded that night that Croatia had to take action.
The legendary Croatian Operation Storm was a military and political breakthrough, but also a moment that showed that Serbia was scared and that there would be no Balkan War. That is why Richard Holbrooke, the man who would later sign the Dayton Agreement and thus stop the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, very quickly came to the negotiating table in Zagreb. Tudjman then presented his own vision to him, warning of the danger of forming a large Muslim state, which, according to his belief, would stretch from Macedonia to the Adriatic and would be politically unsustainable in the long term. Tudjman, who was a classic Croatian idealist, sincerely expressed these words: Bosnia and Herzegovina has no future.
Peter Galbraith considered Tudjman's vision unacceptable because it was contrary to the American vision of the Balkans as a stable multi-ethnic region. However, it is significant that, several years later, it became known that it was precisely American diplomacy, with Galbraith's consent, that mediated the secret delivery of Iranian weapons to Bosnian forces. Documents declassified 2 years ago revealed diplomatic maneuvering, covert operations, and cold pragmatism. Although Iran was under a US and Western embargo, the Bosnian army received significant assistance, which Galbraith later tried to deny before Congress. What is important for us is that Croatia helped the Americans smuggle weapons to the Bosnian army.
Later, at the court in The Hague, Galbraith's testimony in the trial against Croatian generals reopened the question of motives and interpretations. He opposed the claims about the existence of a joint criminal enterprise, but emphasized that the actions of official Zagreb often seemed to him like an attempt to create an ethnically homogeneous state. The messages were contradictory, as was the political scene of the 90s. The issue of homogenization, the return of refugees, and the political reorganization of the region posed difficulties both for Croatia and for international actors. Until the very end, Galbraith remains a figure of divided motives, caught between personal morality, the politics of his own country, and the relentless logic of international relations.
Drawing parallels with the present day, the war in Ukraine appears to many as an echo of what happened in Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Imperial policies, attempts to preserve spheres of influence, and justifications for interventions under the concept of alleged protection of the Serbian or Russian minority find an analogy between Moscow and Belgrade. From Washington's perspective, Ukraine is strategically crucial. With its vast territory, resources, and demographics, it represents a geopolitical bulwark towards Asia. Therefore, American support for Ukraine, expressed more openly and concretely than was the case with Croatia in the 90s, stems from a deeper strategic calculation, not just from sentimental identification with the victims of aggression.
Viewed from the Croatian perspective, we must never forget that America thanked us for saving Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Bosniak people. We must constantly repeat the American words that we sacrificed our blood and our money, which is why the Bosniak elite, Europe and America, must regard Croatia's role with respect. Anything else is a Croatian diplomatic failure that we must prevent.